Ahem. I spent the following day in a nearby town, enjoying a number of tourist activities and not thinking about my personal investigation. The rickshaw puller said that I was the lightest customer he had all day. I didn't know if I was happy about the information, but the tour was entertaining. After eating my fill and exploring a historic site, I returned to the inn that evening. I soaked in the hot springs, breathing in steam. The water's warmth seeped into my bones and turned me to jelly, washing away my fatigue. I leaned against the stones at the edge of the pool for support. In my right hand, I held a cup of cool white wine. A rosy color had flowed to my cheeks from not just the hot springs' warmth, but also the alcohols. I was taking advantage of a private bath to drink. Mwah. Did I need to drink less? What a relaxing day I had. Shoko, your secret lover got eaten by a monster, you know. I probably was a little drunk as I dragged myself out of the hot spring, sloppily drying myself off with a towel and my hair. My hair with the hairdryer. I slept quickly that night, as usual. Another day arrived. The sun shined through the open shoji of my room. When I checked the weather, the forecast stayed the same with clear skies for the upcoming days, a good sign for the ceremony dance event. Oh, hello, Keeper. I happened to meet Keeper on the way to the cemetery again. We made some small talk about how I had been enjoying my visit so far. Before long, the conversation shifted to a Mikami-related topic. She smiled. I'm glad you've been getting along with our priestesses. They're both very friendly. I heard they had an older sister. I pretended not to know the relationship between Mikami Itoha and the older sister. Waiting to see if the Keeper would hint me into new clues. Yes, Mikami Itoha. It seems you were interested in her affairs. It's virtuous of you to ask about her for Shoko, but I'm afraid she passed away many years ago. Keeper made a grief-filled expression. She died of heart failure. She corroborated the information I had collected from the townspeople. Up to this point, the conversation was normal, albeit disappointing. The one who Shoko yearned for was mundanely dead as far as all were concerned. Even if some brought up suspicions on Mikami Itoha's death, no statements had come forward to show signs of her continued life. Then, Keeper reminded me of my suspicions regarding the shrine. She smiled. However, all will be well soon. The day of salvation will soon be among us, and the dead will be revived. At the time, you can speak with her as you wish. I hope we can trouble you to stay with us long enough to see that day. Salvation? Dead? Revived? What? I'm sorry? Can the dead come back to life? Yes, she will. Salvation and the return of the dead to the living. Those were concepts that could have many meanings. A chill ran down my soft spine at the thought of a mass murder incident happening to the sizable crowd of people who gathered for the local religion's events. Poison cocktails could easily be fed to people as salvation drinks, leading them to their unknowing demise. That was one meaning of salvation. That's the Tokyo Dark meaning of salvation. If you remember the cult in that game. At the very least, death hadn't been mentioned in the priestess's explanation of the Stringless God, so I calmed myself from the extreme case. Yeah, definitely phrasing that as a you can speak with her then definitely does give off vibes of, we're all going to die and go see her. He was mentioning the revival of the dead reminded me of the popular Christian Messiah, said to have returned for the dead. Perhaps Mikami Itoha was in hiding for these years so that her return could be a proclamation of a Messiah. People like those sorts of miracles. That idea was better, but still unnerving. There was, of course, always the minute chance that Keeper's perceived reality was true. Was Mikami Itoha dead? I see. Keeper took out a note card and wrote down a time, passing it to me. She grinned as she handed it over. There's a gathering later today with food and drink like before. Our priestesses will be performing a purification, and you're welcome to attend. It'll be at the same location as the previous gathering. Putting the card away, I took a deep breath in, as subtly as I could. I'll be there. What a twist it would be if Keeper turned out to be Mikami Itoha. But we did see Mikami Itoha's body in that one bad ending, deep in the shrine. Which lends credence to the whole maybe something ceremony come back to life. Parting with Keeper, I arrived at the cemetery. Passing the cemetery gates, I made my way towards the Mikami section. I stopped in front of Mikami Itoha's grave, staring at the inscription on her tombstone. So, are you dead? I started to draw out the timeline for this case. Mikami Itoha was in her 30s at the time of her death. Based on her birth year, she was a few years older than Shoko, making it a friendship between different grade levels. Why did Shoko say she was missing? Mikami Itoha died around the time Shoko last visited her hometown. That was 5 years ago. Shoko wouldn't have been able to attend Mikami Itoha's funeral due to its private nature. However, she should have either known about the death or been informed afterwards. Reality was that we lived in an age of technology and easy communication. Next, I wanted to look at Shoko's and my matters. Shoko died around 3 years after Mikami Itoha's death. A few months after Shoko's death, I was attacked on the streets by a man who I perceived as a monster. It sounded like an isolated incident, but the attacker unexpectedly came from this Oh. The next major category of clues was the relationship between the people. Specifically, there was the Mikami family, the wealthy and eccentric family made of persons of interest. At the top of the relevant section of the family tree sat a Mikami Yasunobu. He had 3 daughters, Mikami Itoha, the blindfold girl, and the priestess. None of the daughters resembled him, which was no surprise as they resembled each other. Did they resemble the mother? If that was the case, then they all had to share the same mother, which didn't seem quite right. A whole bunch of mysteries, and no backup. Shoko, I'm starting to understand why you didn't get anywhere with this case. But couldn't you have left me a few more hints? Heaving a sigh, I crouched down at the grave. As before, I saw no black strings from her plot. Squinting, I found nothing. Then again, the priestess could have cut all of this purported dead woman's strings. What happened to you, Mikami Itoha? Did you really die from heart problems? The grave did not respond. Of course. Good talk. Seeing no luck at the cemetery, I decided to visit the shrine early. I cooled my head while walking up the stairs extremely slowly, looking up at the clear blue sky. The weather really was nice. Despite my slow pace, it seemed not many people had arrived. This place was actually rather pretty. Thinking that I should take a few pictures, I pulled out my phone and fiddled with a camera application. With the back camera, I snapped a number of shots of the shrine, the sky, and the plants. With the front camera, I tried for a selfie, feeling particularly like a tourist. Tranquility was broken by 2 pairs of fast footsteps from a corner behind the shrine. Oh. Oh no. The blindfold girl rushed out from behind the corner, the priestess chasing hastily after. The priestess grabbed the blindfold girl's hand despite the latter trying to shake her off. The blindfold girl seemed angry. The priestess, on the other hand, looked desperate. Neither had noticed me, so they argued loudly. The blindfold girl shouted, "Let go!" The priestess frowned. "Not until you talk to me." The blindfolded girl smiled wryly for a moment. "There's a reason why I didn't want to cut strings anymore, but you know how that turned out. If subtle doesn't get through to you, the answer is badly." You could blame me, but you shouldn't do this. I love you, so why can't you understand? Thinking I should call out to them, I found my words lost on my tongue, with the realization that I didn't know their names. Mikami. Was that all I knew? Ah. The priestess seemed to have noticed me as she looked my way. Taking advantage of her lapse in concentration, the blindfold girl broke away from the priestess's hold. "Oh, wait!" The blindfold girl ran away. The priestess stared blankly after her sister, dumbfounded. Was it my fault she lost her sister? We watched as the blindfold girl descended the stairs and went out of sight. Then there was silence. I looked away, knowing fully well that I couldn't pretend to not have overheard parts of their argument. Still, I hadn't heard enough to determine the topic, nor the wronged party, if any. The priestess shook her head and approached me. "Hello, detective. You're not going to follow?" Her eyes became a bit somber. "No, the purification ritual is soon." She frowned deeper. "My sister." The girl whose name I didn't know shook her head and did not continue to speak. "What is your name?" She looked to me. "Mikami Towa. Towa is spelled with a kanji for eternity." She smiled weakly. With so many Mikamis, you can call me Towa. What about you?" "Mana. Spelled with a kanji for love." "Mana." A soft smile came to her face. She spoke my name as if testing the sound on her lips. We were the only people here right now. The trees rustled and the birds chirped, but no one would interrupt our quiet but ourselves. Mikami Towa. Towa looked up at the sky. "I have to get prepared." We checked the time in unison, receiving a reminder that the gathering would be occurring soon. Someone's last string would be cut in what the shrine called purification. Good luck." She smiled at me. She nodded and walked away, entering the shrine building. Before long, people began to gather. "Oh, hi, Keeper." Keeper appeared at the front to make some announcements, giving a reminder about the upcoming thread-cutting sword dance. Killing time, she even dropped a small joke, eliciting low chuckles from the audience. Was there something strange in the surroundings? My left eye twitched. Finally, the time for purification arrived. Walking to the front, Towa called for a townsperson. The townsperson hurried up, sitting across from Towa just like the one from my first evening in town. Attached to him was a single black string. It was a thin, fragile thing, representing a hatred between him and another. She took it in her fingers, proclaiming it to be his last string binding him. Then she cut it. She cut the black string I had once thought to be inviolable. At least not in this way. Beautiful. I met eyes with Towa. One string turned to two pieces with the slightest sliver of a gap appearing between them. The string began to fall, dissipating into black specks. The string disappeared. The townsperson cried out in gratitude, clasping his hands together as he dropped to his knees. With conviction, Towa declared the outcome. "He is pure." An air of joy swept over the crowd. They began to applaud. I clapped my hand quietly along with them, observing their happy faces. After the clapping concluded, they fell into a prayer. Suddenly, something felt off. My sense of equilibrium warped, causing me to nearly stumble over my feet. Hobbling to lean against a nearby tree, I pressed my palm against my left eye. The ground was flat, nothing was shaking, yet something was wrong. I closed both my eyes for a moment, furrowing my brows. Buzzing noise pierced my eardrums. Gasped. I didn't gasp. Cut. Oh? This is hello in Morse code. We're going again. Who was saying hello to us in Morse code? What did you think about the string cutting? You look a little pale. Towa's voice broke me out of my stupor, and I met her clear eyes. She seemed worried about me. Amazing. It was amazing. I didn't expect it to be so... I shook my head, clearing away my mental fog. Towa relaxed. Glancing around, I found that the townspeople had already gotten out refreshments and were mingling, happily chatting about various topics. The person whose string was cut was nowhere to be seen. Where did the purified person go? They usually go talk to Keeper after purification. Towa gestured toward the shrine building. There's another purification happening tomorrow. She frowned. Today's was a black string. Hatred. We saw the same thing. Black. Hatred. These thin black lines that linked people she saw and cut, and the color in her eyes was the same as in mine. Actually, I can also see them. Towa's brows raised at my sudden confession. Didn't know what overcame me. I hadn't told anyone of my sight since childhood, having long grown past the age where speaking of imaginations was still considered the norm. I haven't even told Shoko. was that because this girl also had the same madness as me. She looked at me fondly and smiled. I had a feeling. She interrogated me curiously. What do you see? How do you see it? I just see the black strings. They are varying thicknesses and transparencies, but in the end, they're all just strings of hatred. It's convenient for my job as a detective. There are plenty of people who commit crimes who hold strong negative emotions toward the victims of their crimes. Reached out toward a black string in the air, and my fingers passed right through. However, I can't touch them, not like you can. I'd never even thought about it before. After all, I'd always thought that the strings weren't meant to be cut. They are untouchable, as human bonds should be, only affected by people's own thoughts. To me, it's really rather strange that you cut them. They're false, he said. You see more than just black strings, right? Not just hatred, but other emotions. She smiled. Yes. Then why do you cut the kinder feelings, too? Towa hesitated with a frown. Good question. It's freedom. She smiled slightly, a bit painfully. Feels like you don't 100% believe what you're saying. Everyone is happy when I cut their strings. Turning her head, she seemed to look round for someone. Amidst the crowd of townspeople, her target was not here. Her sister was not here. Then she refocused on me. What does getting your string cut feel like? Towa fiddled with her watch while thinking. She smiled. Good. Would you like me to cut a string? I paused for a moment to contemplate. What an intimate thing. Allowing someone else to touch and cut your emotions. I slowly nodded. I have to finish up first. She started to walk away. You can follow. Oh. Inside we get. Towa led me inside the shrine building. Slipping off our shoes at the entrance, we made our way to a room with an altar. Daylight cast squares of light onto the light-colored interior through the window's washy paper. A small incline of steps led up to an altar with a candle holder inside. The area of the steps that led up to the altar was flanked by wooden railing and 2 tall stone lanterns. An opaque Fusuma sliding door was at the other end of the room. She retrieved a matchbox, striking it twice to create a flame, and relit the candles in the altar. The flame wobbled, a haze drifting out from the altar. The air danced with colors lit by a tiny, minuscule fire atop an austere candle. I breathed in a sweet scent. Kneeling before the altar, she prayed. Her eyes were closed and her hands together. She silently communicated to her god. As she did, the candlelight seemed to grow brighter and stabilize. The haze disappeared. She stood up, returning to my side. What's the candle scent? Tasting the remnants of the smell, I tried to think of what flavor the candle was. Fruity? Not quite. It resembled more so caramel. Towa gave me a confused look. The candle is scentless. Eh? It's a normal wax candle that we light as a symbol of shining light. I sniffed at the air, but the smell had already dissipated. Is this a special ritual that priestesses do? She smiled. Yes. We do it daily in order to send light to the Stringless God who is trapped in darkness. It's a special prayer and a special way of conveying gratitude. Towa looked on, seriously. The job of a priestess is to serve the Stringless God. Your sister doesn't do it anymore. Towa frowned. No. A pained expression floated onto her face. Shiki doesn't perform anymore, but she's still a priestess of the Stringless God, as long as she's willing to. Oh, so Shiki's her name. Towa smiled. Yes. Warmth crept into Towa's voice as she spoke her sister's name, making me a little sour in my heart. How's it written? With the character for string and the character for hope. Oh. She gestured in the air, tracing out the kanji with her right finger. Index finger. It nodded along to her movements, remembering the photo in my pocket. The same string as Mikami Ito has Ito. Wasn't too odd for family members to share characters, but Towa's name didn't contain the character for string. Eternity. Her name was such. Curious? Their father's name did not contain the character either. Given the small sample size, I wondered if it meant anything. Not remembering clearly the names in the cemetery. Yes. She confirmed my statement with a low voice. Towa looked somewhat disgruntled. Oh! As we talked, the door opened and Keeper stepped in. Towa greeted Keeper with a nod that Keeper returned. Keeper smiled at us. I'm happy to see you two are getting along so well. The gathering outside is wrapping up, and I hadn't seen our guest around, so she was inside. How did you enjoy the purification? I hope you were able to view it from a good place. It was very interesting. That person, he's stringless now. Towa told me that you met with him after the purification. Yes, I was talking to him just a moment ago. He's been freed now from the chains that bound him. For this, we have to thank our priestess's hard work. Are you interested in string cutting? She offered. Keeper's smile twisted into a grin. What an ominous way of wording that. It should be a private affair, then. String cutting is a holy event. I'm overjoyed that you've decided to partake in the blessings of the Stringless God. Keeper made a movement with her head, almost a nod, as if she knew something I did not. I'd like to offer you the chance to explore the workings of the shrine while you're here. Our priestess won't mind showing you around. I mean, I got that impression from Towa already, but you were just wantonly throwing that statement out there, Keeper. Thank you for the offer. Perhaps I could find out about Mikami Itoha's relation to this organization. Keeper glanced at my golden eye, our gazes meeting for a second, which caused me to look away. She had no strings for me to redirect my eyes to. She looked at it fondly. Towa seemed a bit off-put herself. You have a golden eye like our priestesses. It suits you. Thank you. No, thank you for coming here. I'll take my leave now to give you to privacy, but please do take your time. The first cutting is very special, and I hope you will enjoy it. No one will come in until you finish. Giving both of us a bow, Keeper left, closing the door quietly behind her. Shall we cut a string now? Towa nodded, looking at me. Through me, with her golden eyes. She ran her hands through the air. The strings that I could see swayed, dancing to her slender fingers. Could you cut a black one? I'd like to be able to see what happens. Which one would you like? Thick darkness. Towa awaited my response as if it were as ordinary as asking me what my favorite season was. The thick one over here. I gestured toward a black string. I didn't need this relationship. Not to the chromosome donor it was connected to. Towa nodded, tracing her finger along the black line. How does cutting the string affect the relationships between people? She smiled. Cutting it makes people more true to themselves. The feelings disappear? Her smile disappeared. If they were fake. She took on a more neutral expression. That is a very interesting thought process. It kind of paints strings as a sort of societal relationship obligation, almost. You have few strings, Mana. I liked her voice, and I wanted to hear her call my name more. Was it the second time? I felt a little heat rise to my ears. Is that a good thing? Towa smiled gently. It's a good thing. What about you? How many strings do you have, Towa? She furrowed her brows. I don't know. I can't touch my own strings. She went to the side, bringing out a cushion and placing it on the floor. Returning to me, she led me over and motioned downward. Towa took on a more professional expression. You should sit. I sat. The light in the altar seemed to flicker. Towa took the string between her fingers. She looked at it, focused. She cut. The string broke, a gap appearing as the pieces fell down to the side. It seemed to dissipate into the dust before my eyes. Or is this a bad thing, that we picked the bigger string? Ah. A strong wave of comfort spread over my body. The world seemed to brighten and float, everything becoming terribly pleasant at once. Oh wow, I felt a presence gazing down at the light. Then, snapping back to reality, I found myself holding on to her shoulders for comfort. She looked at me with slight concern. How are you feeling? Her voice reached my ears as a murmur. Good. Towa was pleased by my response. She smelled soft, and her touch was gentle, but reserved, as if she was hesitant to hurt me by accident. Even so, she helped me up. Towa's presence tempered by the intensity that had struck me upon the cutting of the string. I couldn't help but wonder, did the Stringless God exist? I could tell why people liked this. The rest went by with a blur. Before I knew it, I'd returned to my inn. Night had fallen. Soaking in the hot springs, I realized that the day went by without thinking much about Mikami Itoha. Now, Mikami Towa was on my mind. Route split occurred. She was a pretty person. She had pretty eyes, a pretty voice, pretty hands. Although Towa had said that Mikami Itoha was her older sister, she didn't treat the deceased as such. I poured myself a drink and sipped, feeling the burn down my throat. Comfortably adjusting to lean against the edge of the pool, I lowered myself so that the hot water lapped at my shoulders and soothed away the exhaustion from the day. I was warmed up, in and out. Thinking about Towa, I suddenly found that my heart skipping a beat. Was it all right to think about another girl while naked in the hot springs? I sputtered, nearly drinking in the spring water. I sat up and drank a bit more alcohol. The slightly bitter taste of my tongue distracted me from the heat in my cheeks from neither drink nor hot springs. My string had been cut earlier. Strangely, I no longer felt much toward that person who the string had been connected to. It was as if the unpleasant thoughts were dampened. I couldn't imagine what stringless people felt. As expected, it was creepy. Was Mikami Itoha stringless or missing from her grave? I didn't know. Perhaps looking into the shrine some more would be useful. I refilled my cup a few times. Feeling a bit of alcohol dribble down my chin as I drank, I wondered if I was getting a little tipsy, just a tad. I let out a sigh, blinking slowly. The sound of water filled my ears. Time seemed to slow, heat filling up my bones. With my free hand, I traced over the many, many scars that lined my body. The tissue was still a harsh red, a sign of their recency, and they'd always be rough. Even my heart had a scar over it. As I had the hot springs to myself, no one would see. I didn't want anyone to see. I felt a bit sad, because I wouldn't be able to go to many places. What could go wrong? I poured myself another drink. Shoko liked alcohol a lot, and I picked up the bad habit from her. We'd shared many drinks at the izakaya after finishing various cases. The moment I had no side dishes, picking snacks in the hot springs probably would be a little excessive. My vision grew blurry. Was it the alcohol? Was it tears? I missed Shoko. The drink I brought today tasted good, so I figured I could have just a little more. Paired with the hot springs, it made me feel warm and comfortable. I melted into the water. This seems like a bad end. I'd been so cold. My body temperature had never been high, but after the coma and trying so hard to get better, I'd always been so cold. The cold hurt. It made my body ache so badly I couldn't force myself to walk. I also wanted to be warm again. The cup was emptied once more. Okay. I filled the cup again, clumsily bringing it to my lips as the clear liquid overflowed. It was bitter and sweet. It brought heat, yet was soothing. I seemed to forget all my troubles. Looking upwards to the night sky with blurry eyes, I wondered if I would ever be able to see a beautiful starry night again. What did I come here for again? I closed my eyes. I wanted to relax and become one with the water. Oh, that's bad. Yep, we are dying. I wanted to relax and become one of the water. Muscles loosening, I let myself slip downward into the hot springs and dropped the cup to the side. Hot water lapped at my nose. I couldn't bring myself to get up. It was warm, but this was called drowning. Yep, that dead end. Fair. Very fair. Moderation. I was drunk. Definitely drunk. What am I doing? Expression reflected in the rippling water seemed to question myself. Who was this person supposed to be, Mana? Bringing my hand to my face, I covered my eyes. No one would see me right now. My hand was warm right now because of the water. I forced myself out of the hot spring, extra careful not to trip. I made to go to bed and slept. No dreams. I woke up to a headache and my hair a mess from sleeping with it wet. Bringing my hand to my temple, I rubbed against the pain with my fingers that had already become cold. The discomfort was no worse than usual. Unmotivated to head outside, I lounged on the tatami. After a few minutes of nothingness, I found myself getting bored and stood up to get my bag. I pulled out my laptop, set it on the table, and resumed research on the Mikami family. Using just the right query terms, I dug up an old article from the nearby high school that mentioned Mikami Itoha and her mother's name. I followed that thread, finding that the mother died a long time ago, over 22 years ago. Then I hit a number of dead ends. News of Mikami Itoha seemed to have disappeared off the internet since after high school over a decade ago until her obituary. In this day and age, there were still people who stayed off the web to this extent. I closed the laptop, putting it away, and began heading out to the shrine. After high school, until her obituary. It's a matter of, Keeper had given me an offer yesterday to learn more about the shrine. Would looking into the Stringless God help me understand what happened to Mikami Itoha? Would it reveal the truth about the strings that I've always seen? The shrine was in view. As I finished climbing up the stairs, I bumped into the blindfolded girl. Her name was Shiki. She smiled as she greeted me. Hello, detective. Good morning. Shiki did a circle around me and hopped back. She frowned. She can tell we had a string cut. My sister cut a string for you yesterday, didn't she? Yes. Did she tell you? Shiki grinned mischievously. Hehe, that's a secret. Then her smile became a bit kinder. Would you like me to mend the string? Oh! You can do that? Remembering the way the string appeared to disappear, I brought a hand to my chin to imagine how she would mend something cut. Only for recently cut ones done by other people. So what do you say? I can't see the save icon on that backdrop. So maybe we aren't on a route split yet. This feels like a very, I'm gonna pass for now. I shook my head. I'd rather not. Shiki's smile disappeared. She frowned, brows raised. You don't care about that relationship. If I don't feel it, then it's fake, isn't it? That's what your sister said. Fake. That emotion was fake. Cutting away such fake feelings would lead to freedom. I wasn't totally convinced of that rhetoric. Shiki seemed hesitant. I see. I just didn't care for that string. Then Towa walked over, coming out of that shrine building. Her brows raised in surprise. Mana, Shiki. Good morning. Shiki seemed a bit listless. She smiled sadly. I came here because I wanted to talk with you, but I suddenly don't know what to say. Towa frowned. Is it about what we were talking about yesterday? Shiki, too, frowned. Shiki's probably disappointed because she thought we were different. An outsider she could bond with, unrelated to the cutting of strings, but by not considering the thought of mending the string that we had cut. kind of disappointed her, in a sense. She became very displeased. I know I can't change your mind. You won't be able to change mine either. Just don't get into trouble, all right? Towa smiled painfully. That's my line. Maybe. Shiki's smile was filled with anguish. Cutting strings, and that's what you chose to do. Shiki frowned as she addressed me. Detective, don't get her involved in anything either, alright? Or else I'll be upset. Without waiting for either of us to respond, Shiki turned and hurried away. Towa made half a step after Shiki, stopping and almost reaching for her watch, before shaking her head with a sigh. Towa looked to me, a bit despondent. Good morning. Could I trouble you for a bit of a tour? I wanted to learn more about the shrine and the Stringless God. Sure. We walked into the shrine building from the same door as usual. Going through the hallways and rooms, Towa explained the history of the shrine. The building had been constructed originally centuries earlier. However, when she was very young, the entire land was renovated. The Mikami family had put in quite an amount of money. I thought about the door I saw on my first day. The Mikami family was the family of the shrine. Though they weren't the original keepers of this land, they'd been in charge of it for generations now. Apparently, this was a holy land. As for what was holy, Towa only mentioned the presence of the Stringless God. Why do you believe in the Stringless God? Towa replied as if I were asking a silly question. Because I can see the strings. Could Mikami Itoha also see them? She frowned. I don't know. That woman is a holy woman, but I don't know. Towa relit the candle in the altar. Could I talk with the person who's being purified today after the purification? I'd have to ask Keeper. Who is Keeper, anyway? Then my stomach growled. Sheepishly looking down, I pulled out my phone to check the time. We split for lunch. We returned to the shrine, finding a few townspeople already present. Before long, the event started. A woman without strings made her way to the front, sitting down in the chair for cutting. Without strings, without hatred strings. How unnerving. I pinched the bridge of my nose and wondered what color her final string was. A hush fell over the crowd as Towa appeared. Becoming stringless feels like almost an ascetic ritual. Towa took an invisible string between her fingers. No matter how hard I squinted, I could not see. She looked resolute as she spoke. This is the last string binding you. May the blessings of the Stringless God be with you on your path to freedom. She spoke with a clear voice, holding onto the string that must have been reflecting it in her eyes. My gaze was drawn to her slender fingers that held such power. With a sharp movement, she cut the string. She watched her movements with great focus. The townsperson shook with joy, crying out as she fell to her knees, hands clasped together in grateful prayer. She is pure. After applauding at her words, the crowd soon fell silent into prayer. Ah. Uh-oh. We are hearing Morse code again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dashes? The tap of my shoulder jolted me out of my daze. To my surprise, I nearly tripped over, only saved by the cool hands of the tapper. It was Keeper. Towa mentioned you wanted to meet with the purified party after the purification. As such, I'd like to invite you inside for a talk. She smiled. What were your thoughts on the ritual? Amazing again. And about our priestess? Oh, she's quite amazing. I like her. Keeper seemed pleased. I'm glad to hear. Oh, I followed Keeper inside the shrine building, entering again the familiar altar room. Bowing at the entrance, Keeper left. I took up my phone to fiddle with as I waited. Soon, I heard footsteps outside the room, followed by the door opening. Lowering my phone, I looked toward the townsperson who silently entered the room. The candle in the altar flickered. Something warped in my vision. Oh? That thud! She collapsed face first, head smashing to the ground, limbs limp, as they hit the floor with a bounce. I heard a crack like the sound of cartilage. What the fuck? The air thickened, becoming like syrup as I tried to process the sight before me. What? I dropped my phone in panic, hearing the impact of the case on the ground, yet not hearing it. Hurriedly shaking my head, I rushed over to check if she was all right. The woman made no sounds. I rolled her over, forcing my hands under her, and searched for breathing or pulse. I found neither. She was dead. I had to do something. Was this a stroke? A heart attack? Some other issue that could cause a person to drop dead? Like, perchance, heart failure? No, I wasn't a doctor. I couldn't do anything. I stumbled backwards, tripping as I grabbed my phone from the floor. I tried to unlock the device to call emergency services with shaking hands. Again. Vertigo overtook my body, causing my phone to drop again. Reached for it only for a sharp wave of nausea to pierce through to my gut. Buzzing filled my ears and forced my twitching hands over them to block the noise. I heaved, but nothing came out. For a fraction of a second, I heard an angel. Then something began to change about the woman prone on the floor. Her body twitched, convulsing at the chest. Once, twice, thrice. Oh no. She seemed to rise to her feet. A tiny darkness broke through her flesh, tearing out of her like a creature born from an incredibly soft egg. Oh, what the fuck? It was hatching. Oh! Well, this is bad. This is quite bad. A monster. Oh! A dripping darkness crawled out from its egg and was born. Its eyes were red, its tongue was red, its egg was red, its teeth was sharp. You are very special, Shirasagi Mana. All went black. When I opened my eyes, I was outside. It was still a day at the shrine. I'm sorry, what? So yeah, that was kind of fucked up. Was that fucked up, or was that fucked up? Standing amidst the townspeople mingling, I was halfway through eating a cookie as I recoiled from what I remembered seeing. Suddenly, I wish Shiki would have, fixed my string. Suddenly, I wish I would have let Shiki fix my string. As such, the cookie went down my throat the wrong way, sending me into a mild coughing fit. Oh, hello there. Towa, who was standing beside me, gently patted my back and handed me some water. Beside her was a familiar townsperson, and the woman from earlier, with the monster bursting forth from her back, her ribs jutting out like a blooming ivory flower. This did not help my coughing fit much. Towa's brows furrowed with worry. Are you all right? Aha, did we say something surprising? You've always had a good sense of humor. Maybe that joke was just too good. What? Noise. I knew that the monster said words, but it was just noise in my ears. My skull seemed to buzz, and I gripped my hands tightly to not block my ears. Yeah, just a little. My left eye twitched. The person purified yesterday was talking with the monster. The monster, black and red, tearing out of a human body, was standing amidst the people like nothing was wrong. It had claws and teeth and terrible eyes, but no one seemed to see, and lots of strings hanging off of it. Many, many strings. Drip, drip, drip. Monster, human. There were monsters and humans standing together in this circle. Was I going mad? No, this was reality. I trusted in my eyes, which saw the black strings of hatred. Not one of these monsters had strings of human emotion. They only had red that dripped from their bodies, connecting to their human hosts. If I hadn't had much more horrifying matters to worry about, I'd be unnerved by the stringlessness. My chest ached and my heartbeat became irregular. I took a deep breath, and seeing the conversation come to a lull, posed a question. Do you believe in monsters? No, there's no such thing as monsters. Buzzing. A terrible buzzing assaulted my ears with dripping. My brain was going to leak out of the holes with skin and cartilage. I couldn't think clearly anymore. Luckily, the gathering soon came to a close. The afternoon sun bathed the shrine grounds. I hurriedly made to leave, surprising even myself with the pace of my legs. Just walking away made it easier to breathe. Fresh, cool air touching my lungs made me realize how dense with wrongness the atmosphere had been for me. I heard footsteps behind me and turned around. It was Towa. What is it? She smiled shyly. I wanted to invite you for dinner. Dinner? Almost simply my brain being slow to react. Towa blushed. We haven't had guests in a long time, and I like you, so I wanted to see if you'd be interested in coming over. I knew that her like was much more innocent than mine. Feeling my lips curl up unintentionally, I paused for a few seconds just to tease her. Then I flashed her a smile and nodded. Of course, I'd love to come visit. I also like you, Towa. Her ears went a little pink. We descended the stairs together. Walking under the night sky, we headed in the opposite direction of the inn, me following after her. Eventually reached a Western-style mansion. This is my house, the Mikami family home. Oh, wow. I entered the mansion, which appeared even larger than the outside. Chandeliers lined the ceiling, massive white columns with walls with decorative embossments holding it up. A red carpet with a luxurious pattern covered the whole floor, equally as expensive-looking furniture sitting on top of it. The night could be seen through the huge red curtained windows on the far side of the entrance. Excuse my intrusion. Towa passed me a pair of guest slippers. Personal ones held a cuter design than expected. The cartoonish cat with triangles for ears sticking out from the upper vamp. This was likely the house that Mikami Itoha lived in. Do you cook? No, we hired a cook who comes by 3 times a day. What about you? I cook now and then, although I'm not great at it. Mostly make fast meals. If I'm particularly busy with work, I end up going with convenience store bentos and onigiri and the like. There's not much skill involved in putting rice in a rice cooker, but I'm pretty decent at washing rice. Do you prefer rice, bread, or noodles? Towa smiled. Rice. I'm also in the rice faction. Towa blushed, frowning with regret. Oh? It is not rice for dinner tonight. That's alright, I don't eat rice for every meal either. Towa loosened up. Oh, hi, Shiki. I heard the sound of footsteps, almost sliding down the steps, grabbing the railing so as to not trip. Shiki descended the stairs behind us. Towa smiled when she appeared. Shiki smiled herself. Towa! Then she appeared a bit confused. And the detective? What are you doing here? I invited her over for the evening. Good evening. Shiki smiled cordially in response. I see. Welcome to the Mikami family home, then. Oh? Shiki hopped down for the last step and took Towa's hand, dragging her to the dining room. Towa gestured for me to follow. It was elegant and made up of almost entirely of white furniture and decor, with spots of gold and red and green. Fine art paintings in gold flames lined the walls. A fireplace was behind the white-clothed dining table. Golden candlesticks and pots filled with white flowers were set on the table and over the fireplace. The chairs around the dining table were cushioned and looked cozy. We took a seat at the dining table. Soon the cook arrived to serve dinner. After giving thanks for the food, we started eating. The family didn't seem to follow the rule of not talking at the dinner table. They had no stern father or cold mother to command them in this room. It's just them. The sisters appear to live alone. That's kinda sad. Towa looked at me curiously. What's being a private investigator like? A spoonful of meat still in my mouth, I quickly chewed and swallowed before answering her question. The details aren't great to talk about over food. I'm a private eye, so I'm not under the jurisdiction of police departments. I'm typically hired by private individuals to look into cases. There are, plenty of folks who work with attorneys in cases, or even just help investors look into venues to keep their clients out of fraudulent deals. Ventures, sorry. But I mostly deal with violent crimes and kidnappings. I winked my left eye. Towa smiled softly. Due to that, I often work with the police, but some of them, especially the police detectives, aren't a big fan of us since we get nosy in places that they're afraid to be. Towa raised her brows. Us? I'm in charge of my own office now, but I used to work with a partner. Rather, the whole thing used to be led and owned by her. I stirred my plate with a spoon. Are you interested in detectiving? It's always good to have another set of eyes on the team if I could steal you from here. Towa smiled apologetically. Thank you, but I'll just take over the family business and continue serving the Stringless God. Her eyes lowered, a bit somberly. Not much else, I suppose. Shiki? Shiki became attentive when called. Towa smiled a bit painfully. Do you still want to be a novelist? Shiki smiled painfully as well. I'm surprised you remember. It's just an old dream now. Standing up suddenly, Shiki pushed in her chair and made a little wave. I'm going to the bathroom. Want me to go with you? Shiki pouted. Nope, we're too old to go to the bathroom together. Towa smiled. Toilet paper's the wrong way around again, and the pump on the right is hand cream, not soap. No, it's clearly the right way. Moving soap back to the right place, okay? I did say to moisturize to take care of your skin, but don't put it there. Sorry, I forgot. You two really get along. I'm an only child. What's the right way to put toilet paper? Towa smiled fondly with a blush. Shiki says it should be over. I don't really care, but, well, it's a silly story. I'd love to hear it. A nostalgic look danced in Towa's eyes. When we were younger, we got into a big argument over the toilet paper to the point that we just stopped using the toilet paper holder. I'm not sure if you've ever done that before. I thought back to the time Shoko broke my toilet paper holder while puking from a hangover. We ended up super gluing the thing back onto the wall, and the landlord was quite upset. Maybe drinking too much was bad. It's pretty inconvenient. So we compromised on using the wrong way. That's kind of you, since I'm the older sister. By the way, could I ask about something unrelated? Towa looked at me curiously. That picture. Yeah, just completely normal here. There are no strings on me, just sprout my inner monster. Was your sister always blind? Immediately after the words left my mouth, I regretted my question. Wasn't that too sensitive a question to ask? Towa frowned. I slapped my hand over my face and quickly shook my head, watching as Towa looked down at the table, her long lashes covering the emotion in her golden eyes. No, never mind. Sorry for asking. No. She lifted her head. Towa's expression was filled with grief. She used to be able to see. We're identical twins, so the color of her eyes is the same. There wasn't any reason for her to be born without eyesight. She smiled somberly. Shiki had prettiest eyes because they were always shining. She's someone who gives me hope, like the Stringless God's hope for freedom and salvation, but something warmer that only family can give you. Towa frowned deeply, regretfully. It's my fault that she can't see anymore. She was punished. By who? The Stringless God, and... Towa quickly pulled herself up of her sadness before she said anything else. I won't trouble you with this information. No, I'm sorry for asking. She smiled. You're actually a quite like a kind person, even though you're nosy. I get that feeling from your strings. You're investigating Mikami Itoha, aren't you? Towa looked displeased. Mikami Itoha is dead. However, you don't believe it to be so simple. Why are you investigating that woman? The questioning reflected back to me. Mikami Itoha. Remembering the photo in my pocket, I took it out and passed it over to Towa. Her features softened a bit. I'm searching for the truth about Mikami Itoha for this person's sake. My mentor, Shoko. Mentioned that I had a partner, didn't I? She's the other figure in that photograph. She's dead now. Shoko grew up in this town. She moved to Taito for work, so I don't know if you ever met her. She's a bit older than both of us, a bit younger than Mikami Itoha. I'm just thinking about how Mana described the two things about the guy who violently attacked Mana. One, he is from this town. She made that point clear. Two, Mana actively described the person who attacked her as a monster. And three, we've seen what happens when someone is purified in the name of the Stringless God and have all of their strings cut. They become monsters. In a very literal sense. Mikami Itoha was to her a very precious person. I'm the only one who can do this for her, so before I die, I wanted to seek out the details about Mikami Itoha. Towa slid the photo back to me. I picked it up and looked at Mikami Itoha's cold face. Putting the photo in juxtaposition to Towa made me see stark resemblance between them. This strange person who greatly resembles you two, your eldest sister. Towa doesn't talk about Itoha like she's a sister. That thought concerns me. Shoko, I wonder if I knew her. Mikami Itoha had once had a close friend, but Shiki and I didn't know her well. She said there was a person who that woman would talk to, the only external person she would talk to. Yeah, lots of referring to her as that woman. Towa frowned. Since that woman never had strings, I didn't know what she felt about her friend. No, maybe they weren't friends, but something else. This was when we were really little, and that person stopped coming. Mikami Itoha really did die, at least as a human. Towa was insistent. Looking into Towa's clear eyes, somehow I knew that she wasn't lying. I see. As we sat in pensive silence, Shiki returned. We finished dinner. The food got cold as we were too engrossed in conversation, and I mentally apologized to the cook. Looking outside, I found the sky pitch black. I could walk back, but I wondered if I could find a taxi out here at this time of night. Would you like to stay over? I stopped to think for a few seconds before nodding. Thank you, if it wouldn't be too much trouble. Towa smiled. We have a lot of guest rooms. Pulling up my phone, I called the innkeeper to let her know that I wouldn't be there for the evening. Then I turned back to Towa. Afterward, Towa showed me around the house. It was filled with more expensive-looking red carpet, white embossed walls, with nice tall wooden baseboards and intricate light fixtures. Every decoration looked too pricey to touch. Walking through the long hallways and up the many stairs, I realized how much I appreciated the simplicity of a 1LDK. For one, my apartment had elevators. After a quick tour, Towa led me to a guest room. This room was a stark blue in contrast, with a bed with soft white sheets, a bookcase, a dresser. It was as well furnished as a residence room would be. One LDK's one-room apartment, living room, dining room, and kitchen area. 1 LDK, 1 bedroom, L living room, D dining, K kitchen. A chandelier hung from above. Actually, I thought that the Mikami family would have more of a Japanese-style compound. Ominous way of putting that. Since the shrine is Japanese style. This is a little like a sleepover. I've really stayed over at someone else's place my age before. I suppose I was already too old for sleepovers. Oshoko and I had... Oh, now I'm getting sleepy too. Sleepover time. Oshoko and I had pulled plenty of all-nighters and stayed over at each other's places. I hadn't been much of a social animal as a child. Towa smiled shyly. I haven't either. Then I have to return the favor one day and invite you over. I look forward to it. Then she also let out a yawn. Towa's cheeks turned red with embarrassment. I suddenly had the thought, it'd be nice for her to smile and be happy. Good night. Good night. Towa left the room. Plugging my phone into the wall with a borrowed charge, I went to the bathroom to clean up and change into similarly borrowed pajamas. Rolled into bed and closed my eyes. Sleep came quickly. Mystery loves company. In the middle of the night, I jolted up into bed, gasped. Grasping my chest, feeling the rough texture under the cloth, I couldn't remember what woke me up. The room was shrouded in darkness. I checked the time. I hadn't slept very long at all, but those two were probably were in the realm of dreams. I could close my eyes again or get up. It seems like a good point to leave off. For now. I feel like we've certainly come a long way in learning about this place. We've come quite a long way in terms of learning about this place. So until next time, until then, dream well.